while I was away, this whole thing with the Boston bombs happened, and it brought up, of course, you know, a whole other thing in the minds of people about, you know, fear and insecurity and terrorism, and then it also brought up the whole puzzle of these young people and why they did this. And it seems so far that they still don't know why. It's amazing to me that the media, or somebody's trying very hard to make it a Muslim radical thing. They keep on pushing that. He must have been radicalized somewhere. But they haven't been coming up with anything at all to show that that was the motivation. And it seems to me if it were the motivation, they would have made that prominent in what they did so that people would know that that was why they were doing it. But they didn't. Anyway, you know, what I think we have to take care of is the repercussions on the minds of people in the society in terms of people, again, developing fear and prejudice and so on. So I received, you know, from this faith group that I'm somehow on their list, you know, they were encouraging us to talk about this to our congregations. So I thought I would read some of the points and comment on some of the points that they made. Okay? So the core message is our faith and our nation call us to turn towards one another and not on one another in the wake of the Boston bombings. And I think that's spot on for the core message, you know, that to keep our minds steady and to not let all this stories kind of proliferate and theories and conspiracy and what's coming next and all of that, because that's just our mind spinning out of control. Yeah. So a value statement, you know, our nation and our great faith traditions are forged out of love for all neighbors and founded on the single principle that united we stand, divided we fall. Now, wouldn't it be wonderful if all the faith traditions felt that way together about each other? United we stand, divided we fall, you know, that all this bickering that goes on between different faiths just be dropped because it's so completely unnecessary. Because as His Holiness the Dalai Lama always says, you know, all the great faith traditions talk about ethical conduct, they talk about love and compassion for others, they talk about forgiveness. And these are core values shared across the board. And His Holiness says things like God and rebirth and this stuff is like that's developed as ways to help people understand why they should keep ethical conduct. Yeah, but the core message is kindness. Yeah, so I think to keep that and to remember that's not only the core message of Buddhism, you know, but of all the great faith traditions. And so, you know, to support everybody in that way. And so I am greatly saddened when I find faith traditions that don't feel that way. I know that after the Sandy Hook tragedy, there was one evangelical Lutheran minister who went to pray at an interfaith with people of other faiths. His tradition reprimanded him and censored him for doing that because you're not allowed to do that in evangelical Lutheran faith, because that they see that as endorsing the wrong views of other faiths. So they criticized him. Then other people criticized the evangelical Lutherans for criticizing him, and I think they actually rescinded it afterwards, you know, which was good. So I think we need to speak out when this kind of stuff comes up, you know, because sometimes different religions have this incredible fear of, you know, gee, if we pray together with other people, then, you know, all of our followers are going to go to their camp. That says a little bit about how sure they believe their own beliefs. Yeah, but, you know, to not support that kind of talking at all. Okay, as Americans, we are all proud of the way everyone in this tragedy responded. I would say as human beings, we are all proud of the way everybody in this tragedy responded. Bystanders, first responders, marathoners, and law enforcement rushed to do what they could. These good people came from every faith and background, reflecting the rich diversity that makes our country great. That, I think, is beautiful. And I know what I really love is when I come back from an oceanic trip and I'm going through immigration, and in the American citizens line, to see so many different kind of people in the American citizens line. I just think that's terrific. Yeah, that makes me very, very happy. We can channel the inspiration from the unity we saw in the relief efforts into our response as a nation in the days ahead, a nation that unites people from every faith, culture, and background in common purpose. So, definitely so. And, you know, you saw that kind of feeling of unity in the days right after the bombing. And now there's the backbiting and bickering. Oh, the FBI knew about this before. Oh, they also contacted the CIA. You know, how come these people didn't track this down? Something's, you know, and everybody's pointing fingers and blaming at somebody. You know, and you always know that's going to follow. But, you know, why do we need to blame? That doesn't make any sense, you know. And should he be tried in a federal court and given the death penalty, or should he be a prisoner of war, you know, and you know, sent to Guantanamo, or you know, who knows where we send them nowadays, or should he be tried as an ordinary criminal, you know? So all this kind of bickering, and I think, you know, of course, yeah, there's legal decisions that need to be made, but to do it with a spirit of unity, of trying to help everybody involved in the whole tragedy, you know? And the way I look at it is this, the young boy who's still alive, my goodness, I mean, his whole life is completely ruined by this, you know? And can you imagine how he feels when he wakes up one day and realized what he did under his brother's influence? And then to realize that he also drove over his brother. Yeah, when he was escaping, he drove over his brother. So, I mean, this kid is going to have such horrible, horrible guilt feelings, you know? I mean, so he's a victim of his own actions too, when you look at it, you know? And you think of the karma that both of them created, both the older brother who passed away, who looks like he was more the instigator behind it. You know, he died in that gun shootout with all the officers. What state of mind did he have when he died? You know, fear, anger, hatred. He had just, you know, killed people, and, you know, he had killed a police officer right before that, wanted to kill more, had the intent to murder, and then you die with that mental state. What kind of rebirth is he having? You don't want to even think about where this guy was reborn, you know? And so when we say we want all sentient beings to be happy, it has to include these two brothers, you know? And, you know, the two primary people that they damaged during this were themselves, when you think about it. Because, yes, they damaged the victims, and the victims died, and I'm not in any way defending that or rationalizing that, but the victims aren't the one who created the negative karma. Yeah, these two boys did, and they're the ones who are going to be experiencing the results of it. Yeah, so it's a tragedy on all fronts, you know. And I just think of the parents, and even the parents are saying this is a U.S. conspiracy, our kids didn't do this, it's impossible. I mean, what else do you expect parents to say? Yeah? It would be very rare parents who would say, yes, my child did that, you know. But most of them would say, you know, impossible, my kid would never do that. But could you know how those parents feel right now? You know, even because at some level they probably know, I mean, there's enough visual proof there. And to know, my goodness, I brought into life and then raised a child who did this. I mean, how the parents must feel horrible, you know. So, and then of course, I mean, we're talking about the suffering of the people who lost their legs and lives and everything else. But what I'm trying to get at is when we say we want all sentient beings to be free of suffering and of happiness, it's not only the ostensible victims of this tragedy, but everybody who is affected in an adverse way, you know, from it, including the perpetrators. Okay. Any attack against America is an attack against all Americans, regardless of their faith or ethnicity. Any attack against life, living beings, is an attack against all living beings, regardless of their species, faith, nationality, ethnicity, number of legs, and so forth. You know, let's expand this, because this way of just thinking us as Americans, that's again this restricted mentality that you know, us against them, us, you know, this is a thing that involves all living beings. It's not just Americans. As all Americans are united in our revulsion to this horrible attack, as all living beings are united in our revulsion, okay, to this horrible attack. Terror attacks are meant to divide us, and every one of us has responsibility to say, we will not be divided. We are stronger and safer in the face of this threat when we stick together. This means not targeting innocent Americans just because they are or appear to be from Muslim, Sikh, South Asian, or immigrant communities. That is very important, you know, because we saw what happened after 9/11 and how some people in their ignorance, you know, so we certainly don't want more killing and vengeance to come out of this thing, especially against people who are, you know, who are not WASP. Yeah? And I think, I mean, the part I like about America is our diversity, and I think this is what makes the country very special. Yeah? And to really treasure that and make sure everybody in it is protected and not the object of discrimination and revenge. So maybe I stop here and continue later, but yeah, give you something to think about? Yeah. You know, because on all these things, we have to take them into the path, and we have to bring our Dharma attitude to them. If we don't bring our Dharma attitude to them, then what is our practice worth? It's just love and compassion for the people who are nice to us, that's all, which is, you know, even what the cats and dogs have. Yeah? And true spiritual practice means we have to open our hearts and enlarge our hearts, and we have to make that clear to everybody else, you know, and encourage everybody to do that.